What would you say if I could told you that? What would you say if I could told you that in a simple sentence I could change your life and how you look at life? In just one phrase, I think I could maybe change the course of your life and how you look at life. Ready? Here it is. There is a God, and you and I are not He. That'll change your life. There is a God, and guess what? I'm not it, and neither are who? You. There is a God, and we are not God. If you say that to yourselves once a day, we might live a very different sort of life. You smart? How smart are you? You had your IQ checked lately? Is that what determines intelligence? Intelligence tests? How smart are you? How well do you do? How well do you relate to others? How smart are you? A number of years ago, there was a popular TV show. I'm not sure if it's still on. Are you smarter than a what? Remember that with Jeff Foxworthy? So let's see if you're smart enough for fifth grade. By the way, these are fifth grade questions. So I like testing you guys with trivia. So here's 10 fifth grade questions. Are you smart enough as a fifth grader? Smarter than a fifth grader? Okay, here we go. Yeah, I'm sorry, you didn't hear that? Maybe smart. Okay. How many states made up the United States of America before Alaska and Hawaii became states? Go ahead. Yeah, which one's an adjective? Cotton, she, jump, or red? Which one's an adjective? Red. I'm not grading you, okay? What's the number of Roman numeral XVI? Okay, good. All right. A hexagon has how many sides? An octagon has 8. Look at the baptism font. Okay? If a football field's 100 yards long, how many feet is it? 300. Okay. How you guys doing? You guys keeping track? All right. Name 2 or 3 Christopher Columbus. Wait. Once again, smart enough, smarter than a fifth grader. Smarter than a fifth grader? Yeah, I got it. All right. Who commissioned Lewis and Clark expedition? President Thomas Jefferson. Who's the creator of the book characters Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn? Mark Twain. His real name Samuel Clemens. 2 more. Very few people got this. What was the first day of the 20th century? First. Got it. January 1st, 1901. I'm not saying the others you get it. 1901. Don't ask me. I thought it'd been 1900, 1901. And what is a species called that can live on both land and water? Amphibians. That's right. How'd you guys do? All right, yeah, not terrible, okay. This is, are you smarter than a what? And these are fifth grade questions. I could have picked first, second, third, and fourth, okay? How'd you do? Now, I want to ask you a question. Are you smarter than God? Is anybody here smarter than God? Might be smarter than a fifth grader, but then that's smarter than who? God. We've all heard this before. My house, my what? As long as you live underneath my roof, you're going to... Never mind, okay? My car, my what? I'm the boss, you're not. It's my bat and ball, and guess what? If I don't like it, I'm going where? Home? Because I told you so. Ever hear that? You ever hear that? Have you ever said that? And the owner has a right for refusal. No shirts, no shoes, no service, and thank God we're getting over with no mass, no service, right? I'm glad those days are over. Ever had that said to you? Because the reality is the transcendent God, the God who created us apart from himself, who made us in his image, he's the boss. His house, his rules. His car, his rules. Because I told you so. God is God. He's above and beyond us, and we are not smarter than him. And so hence St. Paul summarizes who God is. Read it for me. There is one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all in all. You see, God's the boss. He made the world. He made the rules. It's his game. He has the bat and ball. Yes, God is who? God. He's in charge. He's in control. Peter said, Lord, I will never what? Betray you. And Jesus said before the rooster crows how many times? You will betray me. You'll betray me 3 times before the rooster crows. And so after the resurrection, Jesus in his grace sought out Peter and said, Peter, he's reinstating Peter, Peter, do you love me? Feed my sheep. And Peter said, yes, Lord, I love you. Feed my sheep. Peter, do you love me? Yes, Lord, then take care of my lambs. Peter, do you love me? And Peter got a little insulted, or he didn't know what to think. He fell down on his knees. He said, Lord, you know what? You know everything. You know my heart. You know that I love you. Take care of my sheep. Peter acknowledged that, him being a sinner, Jesus knew everything, including his heart. Jesus knew that he believed. Jesus knew that he was sorry. Lord, you know everything. You know I love you. Take care of my sheep. God knows everything. He knows it all. So we come to Job's dilemma. Job's dilemma is this. He's a godly man, and so Satan and God get together, and Satan brings up the topic to God and says, God, I think Job's only a follower because life's going good. I think he's a fair-weather Christian. Let's make his life stink, and let's see if he still follows you. So God said, okay, but don't lay a hand on one of Job's hairs. You can do anything, but you cannot kill him. And so Satan and God get together, and we're going to see where Job's faith is. And they take away his wife, and they take away his children, they take away his job, his possessions. He gets sick with boils. His friends desert him, and life sucks. Life stinks, excuse the expression. Job's dilemma is life's not fair. Ever have that happen to you? You lost a loved one early in life. You experienced a nasty accident. Somebody dumps you. Somebody doesn't treat you fairly. Do you ever say life's not fair? Something really bad happened. Why did the person have to die here? Why did this have to happen? Why am I being picked on? Why am I not treated fairly? Why did somebody have to leave me? Do you ever go through that? Life isn't what? Fair. And Job faced that. Life isn't fair. God, I'm a follower of you, and all this junk is happening to me. And that was Job's dilemma. And Job said, God, life isn't fair. Life isn't fair, God. You're not treating me right. This all stinks. Life isn't fair. We've all said that. Maybe we didn't get the pay raise. Maybe somebody won't want to go out with us. Maybe somebody died early in life. Maybe we had experienced some form of tragedy, or were traumatized as children, watching stuff children should never see. Something happens to us. Life isn't fair. So God's response to Job is God doesn't take out a stick and whack Job in the head. Instead, God turns Job's head. And God's response is the wonders of his creation. God tells Job, and God leads Job to see who he is in the awe and majesty of his creation. Can you read that? God has set eternity in the hearts of men, but they cannot fathom what God has done from beginning to end. How can God be eternal? How can God never have a beginning? How can heaven last forever? How can God know all things? How can God hear the prayers of millions of people at once and still answer them all? How can God love everyone and even know the hairs of our head and know when a sparrow falls? And so God doesn't whack Job in the head. Instead, God turns Job's head slowly and says, I want you to see my awe and my majesty, who I am. Notice who I am, Job. I am God, and you are not. Creation is awe and awe-inspiring. Now, you don't have to answer this. What's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen? People tell me maybe the Grand Canyon. You ever been to Glacier National Park? Do you ever see the Tetons with the sun gleaming off the thousands of square feet of granite? Awe-inspiring, moving, and touching. You ever see? I've never seen this. I'd like to. A sunset in Hawaii. I saw a sunset over the Maumee. It's okay. Right? Not the same as Hawaii. What's the most beautiful thing you've seen? Your child or grandchild born? For fathers, what's grandfather? What's the most beautiful thing you've seen? An author once said that when we see those awe-inspiring things, whether we're a believer or not, it's as if God's sending a sign and saying, guess what? There's something beyond what you just think. The awe and majesty of creation. How can the Grand Canyon just be an accident? You ever look down in the pit of that? There's a place you can walk on the Grand Canyon and there's nothing but glass below you. I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to do that. I'll stand like 50 feet back. I don't like heights. You see all the layers. What's the most awe-inspiring thing that you ever saw? God's creation is awesome and awe-filled and amazing, and it leads us into wonders. You know it takes 17 muscles to smile and 43 muscles to frown? Who designed that? Who put the muscles together? I saw an infant today, 2 months younger than my granddaughter, Evangeline, and he smiled at me. All right. 17 muscles. Who designed that? Our heart will beat at least 3 billion times the average person's lifespan. Who designed the heart with its arteries and its veins and the muscle to be able to pump blood throughout our whole body? That's a pretty good machine, 3 billion times, right? There are no two fingerprints alike. Even our 5 own fingers are different. 10 fingers, all very different. There's 8 billion people on earth and nobody has the same fingerprint. Children will tell me, yeah, Pastor, and also there's no two snowflakes alike. Wow. Who designed that? Is that all accidental? Does that point us to something far greater? How about this? There's 7 times 10 to the 14th power synapses and connections in our mind. Enables us to think. Is that just accidental? Or did an almighty, all-knowing God create and put that together? That we can store memories, that we can reason and function. We know what things cost. We can pull back memories 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. It'll take over 200,000 light years to travel across our galaxy. That's just our small galaxy in light of the whole grand universe. A light year is about 5.6 million miles. You start doing the math and the awe and majesty of that. How far to the nearest sun or the nearest star, Alpha Centauri? Who put that together? And by the way, if anyone wants to truly be scientific, explain the smile of an infant that melts our heart. Why does it do that? Or explain love, a couple that's married so many years. Explain love, dedication. Explain grief, why a person hurts when they lose someone and that anguish stays with them, that love's so deep. Can scientists explain that? What about guilt? I did something wrong, and the older I get, the more it hurts, and I felt really bad. Or compassion, I'm willing to help someone I don't even know. So God calls us and says, look at my majesty and look at the awe of what I made. The heart that beats 3 billion times an average person's chest. Take a look at the fingerprints, how they're different. Take a look at the Grand Canyon, or who made someone smile. Gregory of Nazianzus said this, in the simple things of life we see the awe and majesty of God. Consider the tribes of birds and their varieties of form and color, both those which are voiceless and of songbirds. What is the reason for their melody, and from whom came it? So I think we missed the window, but there's bird watchers that'll go up to Ottawa, about an hour and a half away from here. There's people from around the country and world that'll watch rare birds travel in northern Ohio on their migration routes from Canada to South America. My son's a zoologist. He says when birds chirp, they're communicating with other birds. If there's food or danger around, there's a certain tone in their chirp. Who put that together? How'd that happen? How? The awe and majesty of God, even the simplest of things, the birds that we don't care about. Look how wonderful they're made. Who gave to the grasshoppers the lutes in their breasts and songs and chirping on the branches? Now, I'm thankful the cicadas haven't made it to Northwest Ohio, right? You're laughing? Yeah, I know, it's true. In Illinois, we had like woods next to our house. When the cicadas came, you couldn't hear yourself think. I'm so glad when they left for 17 years. 17 years later, okay, anyways. When they moved by sun to the midday music, sing among the groves and escort the wayfarer with their voices. God calls Job, and God calls us when life is unfair to look at the majesty and awe of God and realize that God is God and you and I are what? Not. Job's reply was, you got me, God. Job's friend said, I got it. I know why you're suffering. I know why those bad things happen. I know why persons die. I know why there's accidents. I know why people end up disabled the rest of their lives. I know why somebody left you. Because, Job, you must be a sinner. What did you do? Maybe God's paying you back for your childhood sins. You used to pick on that kid in class. Maybe God's getting you back for how you treated that girl. That's what Job's friend said. You must have done something wrong to make God mad, Job. That's why these bad things are happening. And our reply, we sometimes think that when life stinks, maybe God's getting back at me. Maybe God doesn't love me. What did I do wrong? Why is life unfair? But the bottom line is, who here is in position to talk back to God? Who? No one. We can't talk back to God. He is God and we are not. His awe and majesty, His splendor, He knows all things. What can we conclude? Can you read this with me? Then the Lord answered Job, who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man and answer me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Who shut the sea behind the doors? Or when the clouds in His garments and fixed limits to it? Have you given orders to the morning or shown dawn its place? Tell me if you know all this. God says, Job, did you put the world together? Did you put all the stars there? Did you understand how orbits work? Did you put the oceans where they can go no further than their waves allow it? Did you do all that? Look at my awe and majesty. No. So what can we conclude? Well, this is about faith. This isn't a story about Job and Satan. This is a story about Job and God. This is a story of Job saying, why is all this bad stuff happening? You know what God tells Job? I'm God, and I have a plan for you. I have a temporal plan for you on earth, and I have an eternal plan for you. Trust me about that. Trust me. It's about a relationship with God. When bad things happen and life is unfair, it's always about a relationship with God and what God's speaking to us. Martin Luther said this, read it. I can't figure it out. Don't try to figure it out. Let God be God. He knows all things. And maybe when we get to heaven, he will tell us some, and maybe he won't. That's not for us to decide. Let God be God. He understands these things. Yeah, Peter said what? Lord, you know what? I don't know why this is happening, but I know you love me dearly. All things. And finally, wise King Solomon says, read it with me. Trust in the Lord and lean not upon your own understanding. God's ways are higher and above and beyond our ways. And so when life is unfair, God says, I'm God. I have a plan for you. You're my children. And trust me. This will work out for the good. Romans 8:28. All things work out for the good for those who love God, called according to his purpose. You see, God's response to us is something we don't expect. It's grace. And grace is unfair. Somebody once said, I wish I would get what I deserve. I wish God would give me what I deserve. So let's take that question. Do you really want God to give you what you deserve? Does anybody here want God to give them what you deserve? Because if God gave us what we deserve, where would we all be now? Where? You understand that, right? God, don't give me what I deserve. Don't give me justice, because it would not be good. But instead, God gives us what's unfair, and that's grace. While we were yet sinners, Christ did what? Died for us. He gave us that gift while we were sinners. Even though we were poor for our sake, he became poor that we might become rich. That was someone's confirmation verse. It's a wonderful text for a funeral, for their funeral. Who'd have thought my confirmation verse is that we were poor, but Christ became poor that we might become rich. In other words, I was poor, Christ became poor that I might be rich in heaven. Grace is unfair. Grace is free. It doesn't make sense to us. That's why sometimes it's so hard to believe that someone would give something like that to us freely. But that's grace, friends, in Christ, and that's what God gives to us. Grace is unfair. The blessings of God fall on both the who? Well, that doesn't seem fair to us. God, why don't you nail that guy down the street? Why don't you punish her? She's not really nice. God's grace is unfair. It's merciful and kind to all. He who knew no sin became sin that we might have the what? That's not fair for Jesus, but it's grace for us. And finally, today's scripture readings. God, who has all power, can rescue us from all situations, including death. Let God be God. He'll see us through it all. He has the power to do so. Or the epistle. We don't need to go to heaven to hear God's word. We have the Bible. God speaks now. Don't need to go to heaven to hear God. He speaks to us now. And finally, the gospel. Remember Jesus walking on what? Water? The best reason I ever heard why Jesus walked on water came from Toby Keith. You know who Toby Keith is? Country singer. He once said this. And Jesus walked on some water just to mess with your heads. You're walking on water. You're messing with my head. Yeah, I'm God. You're not. You're walking on water. Jesus messing with my head. How can you do that? Don't worry about it. I'm God and I got you too. Take heart as I can walk on water. I can see you through everything. Where the life stinks now, there's an eternal home of blessing, and I will see you through this. You'll grow through this. Let God be who? Are we smarter than God? When life doesn't seem fair, it might not be fair. God says, I gotcha. His mercy and his grace. So what can we say in wrapping up? God is smarter than who? Us. His creation points us to his all. His cross shows us his grace. And we will be what? We believers will be triumphant. What a blessing that is. God's smarter than us. Let God be God. We'll be triumphant. So how about this for a closing thought? Read it with me. Jesus, lead thou on, till our rest is won. And although the way be cheerless, we will follow calm and fearless. God is by thy hand to our fatherland. And all God's people say, Amen. Amen.